basically in the dark, your body starts to produce more melatonin, which then will convert to DMT. And in that, from high levels of melatonin, we make oxytocin too. That's why I say it takes more than hormones to fix our hormones. But I think cortisol plays an even bigger factor in this, in our overall health. But cortisol being acidifying, oxytocin is alkalinizing.
I think that's interesting to play into the most recent research. I'm sure you saw they came out with of all the longevity movers, strong community was the biggest component of longevity, period, like the most powerful at the end of the day. So I think it's got to be oxytocin.
It's got to be oxytocin. Austin and David Perlmutter, their most recent book was on that concept of community and how important that is. And that is honestly the building of oxytocin. And then when I looked at these, some of these war-torn areas, what are things that they had in common? They have multi-generational households. They celebrated everything. Birthdays, they celebrated weddings for a week. They celebrate name days, anniversaries. Everyone remembers everyone. Community, there's big dinners, family dinners together that are just, mandatory, but no one would ever think of not showing up, right? So they build this in the stress. So oxytocin can trump out that stress cortisol. And their dancing and music is part of their lifestyle. And in their language, a lot of gratitude in their language. And I want to, I would say, with creating my own Blue Zone communities by incorporating these concepts as, oxytocin as a primary focus, like what we can do to play more, have more pleasure. We talk about pleasure deficit disorder. And I was talking with someone recently, Tess Masters, she was interviewing me, and we were talking about, she was talking about masturbation. I was like, well, we don't like to use that word. First of all, masturbation. No, we don't use that word. It's self-pleasuring. And she's like, self-pleasure as a meditation. I love it. And I'm like, oh yeah. Self-pleasure as a meditation, because, that is, we have a deficit, especially when vitamin D is low, stress is high. We think about bringing pleasure into our life, in whatever forms, how that increases oxytocin and really creates a sense of stability. And I will share with you, in my own experience, so with this caveat, I recently did a 92-hour dark retreat. I wanted to see what, with no hormone, nothing else I took with me. And so just basically in the dark, because in that setting, your body starts to produce more melatonin, which then will convert to DMT. And in that, from high levels of melatonin, we make oxytocin too. So when you see people come out of these dark retreats and they're like, all this compassion, I feel all this love, in that setting with no disruption, our natural inclination is to make oxytocin, not cortisol. You don't come out stressed out of those situations. You come out with, these amazing visions from the DMT, this sense of oxytocin love and this compassion, and that's within us. And I think that's a really powerful experience. Challenge you, Tina.
I know. I immediately got anxiety when you told me you were doing that. I was immediately like, I'm so scared of the dark. Isn't that funny? I have such an issue with the dark. But then I seek it. The older I get, the more I seek it. I think there's a lot to that. I think there's a lot to the fact that we women are driving with cortisol all the time. It is destroying all of our hormones. It is destroying our hormonal milieu overall, because hormones to me are always a finely tuned orchestra, and we're all so different. That's why I'm so just kind of, I don't want to say anti, but this whole everybody gets estrogen for everyone, on the internet that's happening right now. I love estrogen, and I want to ask you about actually estrogen and oxytocin. I have a note because the two have a very similar impact on me when I take them. But I think that it's the orchestra, right? You can throw all the hormones and all the peptides at someone, like I said earlier, and if they are driving with cortisol, which I am guilty of, it destroys your joy. It causes you to isolate. I turn into a hermit. I don't want to talk to anyone. I get, like I said, I get social anxiety. That's all coming from, I know it is, it's all coming from that high cortisol level and those stress levels. And I think that that's to great detriment to us as women. It's really like the opposite of what makes our hormones the happiest. So with that, how does oxytocin play into the rest of our sex hormones?
Yeah, so it's the most powerful hormone of our body. The way I like to give the example, I like to think of like a university setting. Think of all our hormones, estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, DHA, melatonin, as the students at the university. Each student has their own passion, purpose, roles, skills, right? And so they all have this great, potential. And then you have the professors of the university. I think those as the major regulatory hormones, adrenaline, insulin, and cortisol. And when they're not functioning well, like that professor that comes in hungover or high, turns out the light, the student body's in chaos. So when they're not high functioning or in balance, there's chaos. And then the mother hormone, or the dean or president of the university, is that oxytocin. That trickle down effect. So as I looked at this and studied this, and I go, well, if I go straight to oxytocin, then it's going to be a lot easier to manage everything else. Right. So certainly we want to balance cortisol and the acidity cortisol creates, cortisol creating that hydrogen ion secretion across the renal tubules of the kidney, creating that acidic urine. Acidic urine for women and men long term creates bladder irritability, cystitis, urinary tract infections. It can increase potentially incontinence, but we know an acidic urine is associated with cardiometabolic diseases too long term. So, but it makes sense physiologically because beyond nutrition's a key factor, but I think cortisol plays an even bigger factor in this and, in our overall health. But cortisol being acidifying, oxytocin is alkalinizing. And we think, as an OBGYN in pregnancy, that amniotic fluid has a pH of 8.5. We are birthed in an alkaline environment, right? That is key. And how much does oxytocin play a role in that? I'm not sure, but I look at that oxytocin as alkalinizing. And I studied this, Tina, through now it's 11 years ago when I was 48 and I was having this perimenopausal or second menopause, so to speak, because I'd had early menopause at age 39 and reversed it, naturally conceived my daughter that I was told I'd never be able to have when I was 41. And then at 48 started to be full on in the throes. And I experienced what my patients would come in and say, Dr. Anna, I've gained 5, 10, 20 pounds without doing anything different, right? And as a young doctor, I'd be like, sure, you're not doing anything different. But when it came to me, I wasn't doing anything different. I had gained those 20 pounds. And I was like, okay. So I went strict keto and found out I didn't feel good. I was anxious. I was more irritable with my kids. I called it keto crazy versus keto flu because I knew how to defend against that. But I checked my urine pH and it was as acidic as the pH paper read. This time of my life, I was a single mom with girls in different ages, one in elementary school, a middle school girl, and a teenage high schooler. And there was chaos in my life, but that was such an aha moment for me when I realized basically I was peeing acid. I'm like, no wonder I feel like I'm breaking down. I don't have energy. I have no muscle. I have no focus. So I started in with the alkalinizing foods. And so that's how my keto green or keto alkaline program was born. But I started in with the alkalinizing foods, the bone broth, the minerals, the beet greens, the kale soup, and all that good stuff. But I realized I was checking my urine pH all throughout the day. The mornings I did my, gratitude journaling or my prayer meditation or walked outside or on the beach, my urine pH was more alkaline all day. So that's where I went in to study the renal physiology between cortisol and oxytocin. Like, what was this effect? And it's that seesaw effect until cortisol is too high for too long. And then it's like a broken seesaw. But so that was what really opened my eyes to these shifts in physiology. And then as you increase those, you start creating those oxytocin increasing habits in your life. And my hormones were dialed in the time, but that's why I say it takes more than hormones to fix our hormones. So when we hear these hormone conversations and we want to throw estrogen at everyone, like, whoa, there's a right way and a wrong way to do hormones. And, of course, there's many different forms we can use. So what's the safest form we can use and deliver it the safest way for an individual? But more importantly, think of this hierarchy. When we think oxytocin is the most powerful hormone, pregnenolone and progesterone are the hormones that decline from age 35 to 55 by 75%. And those are our mother hormones down stream from which we make DHEA, testosterone, and estrogen in that order. So if we start top up with supporting our adrenal glands, so I use a lot of adaptogens, work on that alkalinizing balance. And, I get criticism in this area, but I have now worked with thousands and thousands of clients, have them check, and getting that urine pH, you feel healthier, you feel better, you're really you're in control and you're aware. It's like wearing a continuous glucose monitor. It gives you an idea when your thoughts are creating high glucose versus, and the same thing, that stress, et cetera, can create acidic urine pH. So you start going beyond what you're putting in your mouth. And I like how you say it's not what you eat, but what you absorb. And that's emotionally too, the energies you absorb around you and the emotional states that you experience. But by shifting that, you really can balance hormones. And I don't like the conversations around medicalizing menopause, no more than I like to medicalize puberty or suppress a woman's puberty, because why would we suppress a girl's puberty with birth control pills from an early age of 13? I know it's done quite regularly still, but that is interrupting a normal physiologic transformation, and menopause is a transformation. So we want to do it, we want to do it as healthfully as possible. And every sign or symptom that comes up is a invitation to ask deeper questions, to shift lifestyle and mindset a little bit more. So then I look at it that way. I go top down with my hormones in that order: adrenal, pregnenolone and progesterone, DHEA, estrogen, testosterone, and estrogen. Oxytocin is this great bonding hormone, but beyond that, it is a hormone of longevity, of immune support, of cognitive brain support, of cardiovascular support. There's so much that we are just finding out about, really the far-reaching powers of oxytocin as a neuropeptide hormone.